Steve. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Welcome to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. Happy to have you all here. I know I'm certainly pleased to be here. I know I certainly need to be here. And I am very happy that we are starting out tonight from the very beginning. We've gone through another cycle, and we're going to kick off again. So, as we always do, let's begin with the set-aside prayer. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps, and please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And then, because this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of the big book that refer specifically to the fourth dimension. The first is on page 8. Where Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, which is one of my favorite pages in our entire book, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Bill writes that we have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. All right, brothers and sisters, we're going to be rocketed. We're going to be catapulted. Okay. And for tradition's sake, most of you will know. But for those of you who don't, yeah, please join us. And everybody put one hand up like this. And everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. For those of you listening to this recording on YouTube, yeah, we all just raised the roof. We all just raised the roof. Amen. Good stuff. All right. Well, I'm glad you guys are here. And I'm glad I'm here. As I said, I've been. I'll give you guys a little bit of background. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My home group is the Primary Purpose Group of Calgary, Alberta. Similar to Paige, anyone that knows Paige is a member of our group as well. My sobriety date is February 18th of 2009, which means I'm 15 years sober. And I've been doing this big book study for about 15 years. So, you know, and I'm just going to tell you guys, like probably just about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I made a decision to change my sobriety date. My sobriety date had been February 18th, 2001. In 2009, though, I smoked a joint. I smoked pot. And my sponsor's home group, the Pacific Group in Los Angeles, specifically mentions marijuana as part of their sobriety definition. And I want what my sponsor has. And as a result, I have decided to change my sobriety date. So I was actually like 6 years sober. So I haven't had a drink since 2001, but my sobriety date is February 18th, 2009. That said, I have been teaching this particular study exactly the way I'm going to teach it tonight and God willing in the future for 15 years, like once a week. It started out on Sundays, then it moved to Mondays, then it moved to Tuesdays. Really, and kind of the genesis behind this big book study was I had a sponsee of mine come to me and ask if I would teach him not about the book, because we'd already done that, but would he teach me how to teach the book to someone else? And that, I hope, is really the emphasis and the ethic behind this big book study. I wanted just to shout out to my man, Aman. Hey, Aman. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Aman is relatively new and just coming back to AA, and it means the world to me that you're here, brother. I'm really, really glad to see you. And my best to you and Susie, Aman.
Thank you. I apologize for being late.
It's okay, but I noticed. I'm going to tell you that. No, I'm just kidding, Aman. I'm just joking. So anyway, so the emphasis behind this study is to, to hopefully learn, for you to learn how to teach the big book study to someone else. Hey, Ads, how are you? I can't help it. Every time I see someone I love, I'm just going to say hi. Ali Pasha, hi, nice to see you. I mean, I love all you guys, but you know how it is. Anyway, the emphasis ought to be for me to learn, for me to teach you how to teach the big books to someone else, okay? And really, one of the foundational things of this study that I believe is something that I learned from a man named Chuck Chamberlain. Okay, Chuck C. Some of you may have heard of Chuck C or Chuck Chamberlain. I'm very proud to say now Chuck Chamberlain is actually my great-grand sponsor. Okay, my sponsor, Alan, was sponsored by Clancy, who was sponsored by Chuck Chamberlain, who was sponsored by Bill W. And that is, that's amazing to me. And I love that. Chuck C talks about the transition that every alcoholic needs to make in Alcoholics Anonymous. I needed to learn to make a transition from being a taker to being a giver. Okay. And initially, if I'm here and I'm new, I'm relatively new, like Aman. Okay. For right now, you need to be a taker. Okay. You need to be a taker for about the next 17, 18 minutes. You get to be a taker. And then we need you to start giving back right away. Okay. We need you to start giving back right away. Okay. And that's the transition that we need to make in AA, from being a taker to being a giver, from selfish to service. Okay. That's the transition that I need to make. And so please, I understand, people love coming to these studies online, and it's great. And you can be here and just kind of chill and, eat your pizza and listen in your headphones and enjoy a bit of a show, right? I get it. And I love it. And it's a great show to watch. And goodness knows, God knows I love to be the center of a show. God knows. Okay. But please always hold in your hearts that the real ethic behind this study is supposed to be that you're going to take something from this study, you're going to learn something from this study, and you're going to take it back to your home group. You're going to take it back to your sponsees. You're going to continue to give back, okay? Because our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service, okay? And how do I fit myself to be of maximum service? I get sharpened by our book. Okay, our book. So that was the beginning of the study. I started with a sponsee of mine on Sundays, and there was 4 of us that got together on that Sunday, and it kind of grew from there. And at that point, we were just doing it in each other's homes, and I really liked that because that's where originally in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's where they met. They met each other in each other's homes, in each other's living room. I like to refer to myself as I'm a 1935 to 1940 member of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the kind of AA that I live, that I love, man. And it's the kind of AA that I live. That's who I am. And that's the type of AA that I want. And that's the type of AA that I want to teach my sponsees. 1935 to 1940 member of AA. And so we would meet in each other's homes, and eventually that grew. And we started doing it at a hospital. And part of the reason we started doing it at a hospital is I had this lovely young lady who was coming to the study that was in a wheelchair, and she couldn't get to very easily to the place where we were doing it because there were stairs. And so we started to do it at this hospital where there was an elevator, and this lovely young woman kept coming to the study and kept coming to the study. And eventually Paige and I started doing the study together. And we did the study together for a long time. And of course, she's doing her own study, which is phenomenal. COVID hit. And during COVID, we obviously had to move to Zoom. And I never in a million years would have guessed that would have been possible for us to move to Zoom and to be able to teach the big book study in a Zoom format. And I was wrong. And so we moved to Zoom, and we started the significance of, I'll answer that question in just a minute, Greg. So we started to do it in Zoom, and Paige and I did it together on Zoom for a little while, and then she kind of wanted to do her own thing, and we both thought that was a good idea. And so I started to teach this study online during COVID, really is what it was. And then I was approached by, you guys would all know Steve and Summer from the Big Book Compendium, and one thing led to another. And I'm so happy and pleased to, be a part of the Big Book Compendium, be a part of this rich tradition, and to work through this all with you guys. Some things that may be different from this study than other studies. So the first thing is that there's not, I'm not going to say there's a definitive, there's 12, this is a 12-week study or a 16-week study or however long it is. This study takes as long as it takes. And we go line by line, page by page through the book. And I'll give you guys the very best that I have to offer, the very best that I have to teach. And as I said, I've learned a lot, even over the last 15 years. I still have a lot to learn about our book and about this spiritual toolkit and how to share it with you and how to teach it better. And I'm always learning things. There are things that I have changed over the years there are things that I once thought very strongly about that I have changed my mind on, and I can share those with you. And I'm always able to grow and to learn more. Hey, Robbie, good to see you, buddy. So that's one thing about this study. Another thing, some big book studies will have a lot of homework that they require people do. I've never believed in homework, because my problem is oftentimes that, like, I would be doing a big book study and they'd have homework to do, and I wouldn't do the big books. I wouldn't do the homework. Okay. Because I was undisciplined and I was sick. I was a sick alcoholic trying to stay sober, and I wouldn't do what I was told, and I'm defiant, and I didn't want to do the homework, and screw your homework. So I didn't do the homework, and then I wouldn't go back to the big book study, and consequently I would stay sick. So guys, I'm just here to tell you, I just come here. I don't care what you've done. I don't care if you did the homework. I don't care if you read the chapter. I don't care if you drank this morning. Just come here. Just come to this study. Good, amazing, loving things happen in this study all the time. I have seen so many people grow and change their lives. What an incredible journey to just sit and watch God come alive in other people through the application of this book. It's an absolute incredible miracle in my life. And teaching this study is one of the absolute joys of my life. So please just come to the study, okay? On that note as well, some studies will say, after step 3, the study is shut. Do not invite anyone new after that. Or, when we start to teach step 4, we don't want anyone new. The study is closed after that. That is not this study, okay? You just come and you bring anyone you want at any time, okay? And we will love them up, I promise you, okay? And we will get them lit with the spirit of this book and lit with the spirit of God. You just bring them here, okay? You guys just come here on Tuesday nights, and we will get them lit, okay? We will get their fire lit, no matter what, no matter when. I don't care when you come, just come, okay? Deal? Thumbs up? No homework, you just come every time. Let me see a thumbs up. Come on, Tom. Let me see your thumbs up, Tom. Come, there it is. All right, guys. Very good. Okay, well, I think we've got a book to read. What do you guys think? Let's try reading a book a little bit, okay? And I'm going to ask, where's Vincent? Vincent was here. Where's my man, Vincent? There he is. Vincent, would you be kind enough to be our reader tonight?
Yes, absolutely, Kevin.
I knew you would, brother. You always do such a great job. Now, typically, I run this study with my sponsee. Brad is his name, but Brad is just not able to be here tonight. So Vincent's going to kick us off tonight. Vincent's going to be our reader, and we're going to be right at the beginning of our book. And we're going to read a bunch of stuff that I typically did not read. I never read for years in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to go right to the preface and the forewords, and we're going to read the doctor's opinion. We're going to read all the Roman numerals. And I never read that stuff when I was on my own. See, when I came to AA, I thought I knew how to read. I thought I was a pretty good reader. Turns out I had no idea how to read. Okay. I needed someone to spoon feed this book to me because it's written in a language that I don't understand. And that language is spiritual recovery. See, I didn't understand the language of spiritual recovery when I was a drunk. Okay. I had to come here. I had to have somebody translate it for me. And that's what my sponsor did. Okay. And other great men that helped me understand this book. A couple of great men. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Joe and Charlie. Joe and Charlie, the Joe and Charlie Big Book Studies. All right. Raise your hand if you love Joe and Charlie. All right. I got all the love for Joe and Charlie, man. I love those guys. Hey, Cash, good to see your face, man. Good to see you too, Carlene. I love Joe and Charlie. And so I'll say to you guys, the basic framework of this big book study is really lifted from Joe and Charlie. Okay. I mean, that's what happened. I became a devoted student of Joe and Charlie for many, many, many years in my first years of sobriety. I devoured that stuff. And this is back before it was even, it wasn't even online yet. Like I had cassette tapes. I remember I had a book of cassette tapes of Joe and Charlie. That was the most sacred thing in the world to me. Okay. And that's, yeah, there you go. There you go. Joe and Charlie. So that a boy, Allie. So that's what I want to share with you guys. Okay. Now with that, you've already heard me talk about Chuck Chamberlain. You've heard me talk about my grand sponsor, Clancy. Okay. I want to take some of that stuff and we're going to thread it into Joe and Charlie, and I'm gonna so a little bit of Chuck Chamberlain, a little bit of Clancy. Okay, we're gonna pull some other stuff together into that basic foundation. But the basic foundation is the Joe and Charlie Big Book Study. And then I studied in Calgary with a man named Cowboy Ray. And Cowboy Ray, some of you may remember Cowboy Ray from Calgary. It was called the Cowboy Ray Way. And he got it directly from Joe and Charlie. He studied directly, like in person with Joe and Charlie. I got it from him. So that's going to be kind of the basic foundation of this study. And when I tried to read this book on my own, I would start on page 1. If I start on page 1 in our book, hey, Marianne, if I start on page 1 in our book, I'm going to start at Bill's story, okay, which is a fine story, but I'm going to miss some of the absolute most important part of our book. Okay, the prefaces and the forewords provide a really unique glimpse into the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, and I'm going to get a little bit into the early history of AA tonight. Greg, to answer your question, what's special about 1935 to 1940 is that it's the origins of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, it is the original, untainted, unvarnished version of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? And in fact, it's before the big book was even written. It's the first year that the big book existed, okay? Our book, for anyone who doesn't know, was published on April 10th, 1939. April 10th, 1939, this book goes out into the world, okay? And so what I'm really getting at is if you look at, our anniversary, the birth date of AA is June 10th, 1935. Dr. Bob has his last drink. Between 1935 and 1939, okay, there was a very special version of AA that was really devoted to singularly one thing, and that is working these spiritual principles into our lives and going to carry that message to others, okay? And so 1935 to 1940 is a very unique time period in Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? When it was still being this small little spark was just still becoming like a little fire that was tended to by the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. And that's one of the main things that I learned from Joe and Charlie and from Cowboy Ray is this idea of who wrote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. That's a good question. Who wrote this book? Well, technically, it was a human being named Bill Wilson, one of our co-founders. Technically, Bill Wilson was the guy with the pen in his hand that wrote the book, okay? But everything that he wrote was vetted and approved and edited by the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? And you'll hear that referred to. If you're new here, you'll hear that referred to a lot. The first 100, like the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what Cowboy Ray would say to me is that if I'm going to argue with the big book, what I'm really arguing with are the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, I'm not arguing with one man's opinion. And more to the point, who really wrote this book? I would say, and most of us on this study will believe, I imagine that this book was absolutely written by God, that this is the word of God, that it is divinely inspired through a man named Bill Wilson and the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. How do you know that? Well, my grand sponsor, Clancy, jokes all the time because the guy who wrote this book did not know enough to write this book. He was 4 years sober when he wrote this book. And he jokes, he's like, now I know you newcomers probably think, well, he's 4 years sober. You should, probably know something by then. It's funny. You get to be, raise your hand if you're four years sober or more right now. Yeah. Do you think you could write the big book right now with the amount that you know? Not at all. Not at all. And Clancy jokes about that. By the time, when you get to be 20 years sober, you don't want to send someone 4 years sober to get a cup of coffee for you. You don't want to leave them unattended on your property. Okay. But you start to understand that the guy who wrote this book did not know enough to write it. Okay. And the other thing, guys, and I want you, and we're always going to look at this book through this lens, through this context. Okay. That the way that Alcoholics Anonymous diffused or spread across the world was not through AA meetings. It was through this book. A copy of this book would land in Chicago, or a copy of this book would land in Texas, or a copy of this book would land in Canada. Okay. I know for a fact that the first meetings in my city, a city called Calgary, Alberta, Canada, was because a copy of the book was brought to Calgary by a guy named Jack Jensen who wanted to get his brother sober. And they read this book. And as a result of reading the book and doing the actions contained within this book, Jack Jensen and his brother got sober for a period of time, and Alcoholics Anonymous took root in my city. So why do I think this book is inspired by God? Because this book has saved literal millions and millions of lives around the world. Okay. I've heard it said, I can't confirm this, but I've heard it said that it is the third most read book on a daily basis in the world. The Bible is number one. The Quran is probably a close number two. I won't argue that fact, but the number 3 most read book daily is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. I think that's pretty cool. So if you're here and you're new and you're listening to this and you're like, man, these guys talking about this book written by God like that, and you want to throw up in your mouth a little bit, I understand. When I was new, I didn't think that either. Okay. I just knew I just wanted to stay sober and I wanted to stop trying to commit suicide. Okay. I just wanted to survive. I was just trying to survive when I got here to AA. I did not believe in all this. Right. And please, guys, do not compare your chapter 1 to my chapter 15. Okay. Just understand that I was on chapter 1 too at one point. Okay. And we can help you. We can help you get to where we are. And those of us that believe so strongly in this book because of what it's done in our lives and what we've seen it do in the lives of people that we sponsor and people that we love. I know that we can help you find what we have found if you'll just hang with us and stick with us. Okay. And it's fun. Okay. We have a blast every Tuesday night. You guys come and it's just the best, man. It's just the best. I love it. So anyway, with that said, guys, we're going to start at the very beginning. We're going to start at the preface. Again, I didn't read this stuff when I was new, man. I didn't, I thought prefaces and forewords were for losers, man. I didn't read that stuff. And like so many things in my life, I was wrong. I was totally wrong. So we're going to read through this. Vincent is going to read the preface. I'm gonna interrupt intermittently, as we all know, and I'm gonna add just some factual stuff and some historical stuff to what we're reading through right now. So without any further fanfare, I'll hand it over to my man Vincent.
Thank you, Kevin. Vince Alcoholic.
Hi, Vince.
Preface. This is the 4th edition of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April 1939, and in the following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation.
Okay, so I'm going to pause you right there, Vincent. I want everyone to make a note, okay? The first 15 years of AA, okay, the first edition of the big book, 300,000 copies of the book go out into the world. Okay, I just want you to pay attention to that. We're going to come back to that number in a couple chapters. We're going to come back to that number. We're going to see what that number means and why that number is significant. 300,000 copies of the book between 1939 and 1955. Over to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. The second edition, published in 1955, reached a total of more than 1,150,500 copies. The third edition, which came off press in 1976, achieved a circulation of approximately 19,550,000 in all formats.
Okay, so what we're reading right now is the fourth edition. And for anyone who doesn't know, the fifth edition, I remember when the fourth edition came out in 2001, the fifth edition is due to come out next year. And in addition to the fifth edition of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you may or may not know this, but they are working, and this is still somewhat controversial, and it has not been accepted at the General Conference yet, but they are working on what they call a plain language Big Book. That is easier language that can be read by someone with a grade 5 education. And that's what they're working on. Now, they had a version, and you can talk to your GSR about this. Okay, you can talk to your DCM, you can talk to your delegate. Okay, and if you have an issue with it, please let them know. They even had a plain language version of the 12 steps. And I mean, there was almost a riot, the idea that they would do that. Okay, but the plain language Big Book, it makes some good sense, actually, when you understand that I think something like they said 60% of the population of the United States reads at there's like 5 different tiers of reading ability. 5 is like a university level PhD, and a 4 is like, college level, and a 3 is like a high school level, and so on, something like that. 60% of the population of the United States can only read at that 3 level. And so they felt it made some sense. So anyway, all of that to say, the 5th edition, we're reading the 4th edition, and the 5th edition will be coming out next year, along with potentially this plain language Big Book. If anyone wants to know, Kevin, how do you feel about the plain language Big Book? Well, I will, first of all, defer my opinion, and I will let God express himself through our group conscience as a society. And whatever God determines through our fellowship is what I will agree to. That said, part of the reason why I do this study is to help people that don't understand some of this older, antiquated language, and to help connect some of the dots and help fill in some of the blanks. And I worry that if we have a plain language Big Book, the need for these beautiful Big Book studies that I was a taker from Amon for many years, and that now I've had the pleasure over the last 15 years to give back, may become a thing of the past. Anyway, so I think about that sometimes. Vincent, back to you. Because this book.
Thank you, Kevin. Because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume, describing the AA recovery program, has been left largely untouched in the course of revisions made for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th editions. The section called The Doctor's Opinion has been kept intact, just as it was originally written in 1939 by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, our society's great medical benefactor.
Okay, so I'm sure some of you are waiting for me to say, what kind of book is this? It's a basic text. It's a textbook, right? I'm sure some of the older members are waiting for me to say that. And of course, this is a text. Okay, this is not a fictional book. This is not a choose your own adventure. Okay, this is a textbook. And what do we do with a textbook? Okay, we read it, we study it, we learn it, and then what do? We apply it. Okay, we apply it. Those of you who know me will know what I believe the most important word in all of Alcoholics Anonymous is. I believe, and I wish I was at home. If I was at home right now, I'd have my whiteboard and I could write in big letters the letter D and then the letter O. Okay, what's that spell? What's that spell, guys? Do. The only word in my opinion that accounts for anything in Alcoholics Anonymous is the word, not the word dough. No, no, Scott, not dough. The word do. Doing is the only thing that matters in all of AA. Okay. AA is not for me when I want it, and AA did not work for me when I needed it. AA worked for me when I did it. Okay. AA only works for me when I do it. What I think, how I feel, what I believe, all these things are cool. All those things are cute. But guess what? What I think, what I feel, and what I believe did not keep me sober at all. And I can sit in 3-topic discussion meetings and tell you all day long about what I think, what I feel, what I believe, and then go get drunk. Because the only thing that matters in Alcoholics Anonymous is what I do, the actions that I take. Okay. And one of the actions that I need to take is reading this book, learning this book, and then doing what this book tells me to do. Okay. When those early members got a copy of this book, whether it was in Chicago or Montreal or San Diego, whenever they got a copy of this sacred book, this beautiful book, they didn't just read it and throw it away. They read it and they took the actions that it asked them to give. They took those actions and they got sober. Okay. And part of the reason, Greg, that 1935 to 1940 is such an important part of Alcoholics Anonymous is because of the success rates that they had at that time were unparalleled and unlike anything we see in Alcoholics Anonymous today. Okay. Alcoholics Anonymous today, unfortunately, has been watered down terribly, terribly in a lot of places in the world. And I didn't like it when people watered my drinks down. Why? Because it doesn't have the same effect. And I don't like it when people water AA down either for the exact same reason. Why I can't get sober on watered down AA, man. I need 100 proof AA. All right. I need pure Colombian Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. Okay. I need the pure stuff. I need what Dr. Bob calls the good dope, man. I need the good dope. I need it strong. I've got a bad strain of this disease. I've got a bad strain of this disease, and I need to take a big dose of medicine. Okay. In 1935 to 1940, it was pure. Okay. And unfortunately, it's been watered down. And it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to breathe some life back into it. And that's part of what I hope we will all take away from this study. My sponsor, my grand sponsor, talks about pockets of enthusiasm around the world. And this is certainly a little pocket of enthusiasm that we have in this study, a little pocket of enthusiasm that we have in Calgary, Alberta. Okay. But my friend Martin Eyre in Hamilton talks about that we need pockets of resistance is what we need. Pockets of resistance against the slow erosion of Alcoholics Anonymous, the slow watering down of AA. You guys understand what I mean? Okay. So this is a basic textbook. We're going to read it. We're going to study it, and we are going to do it. You guys with me on that?
Yes.
Can I get a roof raise? Can I get a roof raise? All right, very good. Okay, let's keep going, Vincent. This is good. We're a half hour into the study. We've read 2 paragraphs. Good, Kevin. Good. Well done.
Thanks. The second edition added the appendixes, rather, the 12 traditions and the directions for getting in touch with AA. But the chief change was in the section of personal stories, which was expanded to reflect the fellowship's growth. Bill's story, Dr. Bob's nightmare, and one other personal history from the first edition were retained intact. 3 were edited, and one of these was retitled. New versions of 2 stories were written with new titles. 30 completely new stories were added, and the story section was divided into 3 parts under the same headings that are used now. In the 3rd edition, Part 1, Pioneers of AA, was left unchanged. 9 of the stories in Part 2, They Stopped in Time, were carried over from the 2nd edition. 8 new stories were added. In Part 3, They Lost Nearly All. 8 stories were retained. 5 new ones were added. This 4th edition includes the 12 concepts for world service and revises the 3 sections of personal stories as follows. 1 new story has been added to Part 1, and 2 that originally appeared in Part 3 have been repositioned there. 6 stories have been deleted. 6 of the stories in Part 2 have been carried over. 11 new ones have been added, and 11 taken out. Part 3 now includes 12 new stories. 8 were removed, in addition to the 2 that were transferred to Part 1. All changes made over the years in the Big Book. AA members' fond nickname for this volume have had the same purpose: to represent the current membership of Alcoholics Anonymous more accurately, and thereby to reach more alcoholics.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause there, Vincent. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So one of the things, well, I guess, there's a couple things I want to point out. What is the name of this book? Well, the name of this book is Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the name of the book. Okay, it's not actually called the Big Book. We all refer to it as the Big Book, as it says. That's our fond nickname for it. But the actual name of this book is Alcoholics Anonymous. And our society, our fellowship did not have a name until they named this book. And it was not even our first choice of what we were going to name the book. Originally, they were going to call this book The Way Out. And which I think is a pretty appropriate name. Actually, I think it would have been a great name, because that's really what it is. It is a way out of the disease of alcoholism. The story that I have read and heard, and it may be romanticized to some degree, I don't know, but I've heard that the early members went to the Library of Congress to get the name copyrighted or whatnot, and they discovered that that they had named the name The Way Out was already chosen. There was like 12 of them already, 12 books named The Way Out, and they superstitiously didn't want to be lucky number you know what. And so they started looking for other names, and somebody came up with the idea that, like, we should, we're anonymous. We don't, we stay anonymous, and we're alcoholics. What if we called it Anonymous Alcoholics? And Bill Wilson, being like a marketing genius, said, like, what about Alcoholics Anonymous? Just kind of zips. There's a little more zip to it. It kind of rolls off the tongue. And that's what they named it. That's what they named the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's how our fellowship got its name. We are a fellowship named after a book. Okay? We used to be a book that had a fellowship. And now, unfortunately, we have become a fellowship that also just happens to have a book once in a while. Okay? And I think it's important to remember which came first. Okay? We used to be a book that had a fellowship, and I think we need to keep it that way. So the part that Vince just read for us, I mean, talking about all the stories and all the changes in the stories, that part always reminds me of that part in the Bible a little bit, where it's like Jebediah begat Ezekiel, and Ezekiel begat, it just kind of goes on and on and on. It's kind of boring. But the point is, who are they trying to reach? They're trying to reach more different types of alcoholics. Okay. And so they're changing all those stories. There's another book called Varieties of Religious Experience that is very akin to the Big Book. And we'll talk more about that when we get to that part. But the first 164 pages of our book we read that there is such a strong belief in how important this book is that there exists strong sentiment against any change being made to it. Okay, so even in the fifth edition, they're not changing the book. They're going to add to it this plain language big book. But the first 164 pages of the book will never change. I believe that. Okay, and in fact, the only way that a change can be made by the General Service Conference of AA, the only way that a change can be made to either the first 164 pages or the 12 and 12 is if 2/3 of all of the home groups in the world agree to whatever the change is. And anyone who knows anything about AA will know that that is never going to happen. So that's kind of a guarantee. All right. But I do believe that there has been a change. The one thing that they did change recently, and I think it's a positive one, is that they changed the preamble. We used to be a fellowship of men and women, and we are no longer a fellowship of men and women. We are now a fellowship of people. And I can get behind that. I can get behind that. I like that change. Anyway, so that is one of the things that I wanted to point out. One of the things that I think is important to know, and that really struck me, is that this book was written in 1939, not by medical professionals. It was written by alcoholics for alcoholics. It is absolutely divinely inspired. If I'm going to try to argue with something I don't like in the book, what I'm really arguing with are the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that this book will never change. It will never change. And to me, this book is as sacred as anything else in my life. And I love this book deeply. So with that said, Vincent, would you take us out?
Yes, Kevin, I will. Thanks. If you have a drinking problem, we hope that you may pause in reading one of the 42 personal stories and think, yes, that happened to me. Or, more important, yes, I felt like that. Or, most important, yes, I believe this program can work for me too.
Amen. Amen. All right, guys, we're going to read the foreword to the first edition, and let's get into it. And that might be enough for tonight. I may not push into the foreword to the second edition, but we'll see how things go.
Foreword to first edition. This is the foreword as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them,
okay, so a couple of things there, guys. You will see that you'll know that I always introduce myself as a recovered alcoholic. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Okay, I didn't always do that, and I didn't always agree with that. This is an example of one of the things that my mind has changed about over time. I used to think, well, my thing was, Bill Wilson just announced himself as an alcoholic, and I don't need to be more special than that. Okay, but there is a strong sentiment against several people, really a lot of them from Texas, and the Dallas primary purpose group, kind of the original primary purpose group in Dallas, who talk about being recovered alcoholics. And this is one of the things that they'll point to, okay, is that I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, okay? And we'll learn more in step one that means I have a physical allergy and a mental obsession. And as a result of the power of God that I've accessed through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, my mental obsession and my necessity to drink alcohol has been removed. And if it's been removed, I don't take the first drink and I don't trigger that physical allergy. So I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of that physical allergy and the mental obsession that we define as alcoholism. Does that mean that I don't have problems in my life? No, of course I've got, it's life. Certain trials and low spots, brothers and sisters, of course I do. But the mental obsession has been removed. The physical allergy to drink alcohol has been removed in my life by God's grace that I've accessed through the 12 steps. Now, the turning point for me, and what my friend Adam said to me, is that Identifying myself as a recovered alcoholic is the quickest and perhaps the only way I will ever have to carry a message of hope to a newcomer. It may be the only thing they hear. I was an alcoholic, but I am no longer an alcoholic. I am a recovered alcoholic today. Okay. And that, when Adam told me that, I said, yeah, all right, you got me. You got me. Okay, you got me. Now, if you get a concordance, and I have a concordance, I've got it at home. I'll show you guys my concordance. A concordance is not a book that has all the definitions of every word. What it has is every time a particular word is used in a book, it has it outlined. Okay, so because I'm a nerd, well, first of all, because I'm a nerd, I have a big book concordance, a concordance to Alcoholics Anonymous. Cost me a lot of money. They're hard to come by. I got it on Amazon. Like a lot of money, a stupid amount of money that I spent on this, but you know, it's cheaper than a weekend relapse. So anyway, why am I telling you that? Because I looked up the word recovered in the book. Our book uses the word recovered 21 times. 21 times it refers to us as recovered alcoholics. And this is the first one. We are men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Now it says to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. Okay. So, and a lot of people like to, you know, they talk about that, the precisely, they like to say it, is to precisely show how we have recovered. That's the main purpose of this book. So what's the purpose of this textbook? The purpose of this textbook that we're going to read, we're going to study, and we are going to apply. The main purpose of this book is to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered. That's it, okay? Now, I want to talk very quickly about italics, or what Paige refers to as squiggly writing, okay? Anytime in our book that it has italics, very, very, very key and important, okay? Because back in the day, this is before word processors and before they had laptops and stuff. This is on old school printing press. And every time they had to change the typeface on a page like this, where they weren't able to print it with the original typeface, they had to switch it to italics. There was some cost involved. And so they're very, very keen and very careful about how and when they used italics. And you better believe if something is in italics in the big book, it is because the first 100 members felt very strongly about it. This is not the first time we're going to see italics, and it's not the last time that we're going to see italics, okay? And we always need to remember, when we see that squiggly writing, it's something that the first 100 really, really, really wanted to emphasize to me. Okay, so let's keep going.
For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure our way of living has its advantages for all.
Okay, so where it talks about an AA being a very sick person, an alcoholic being a very sick person, this is the first time in recorded history that they're beginning to make an allusion to the idea that alcoholism is a disease. Okay, that's it. That's the first time that alcoholism was ever referred to as a disease, that the alcoholic is a very sick person. Okay. This is not about morality. This is not weak will. This is not just bad character. This is not just being from the wrong side of the tracks. They're starting to make the idea that alcoholism is a sickness. Many do not understand, they say, that the alcoholic is a very sick person. We'll talk more about this in the coming weeks. And then it talks about we're sure that our way of life has its advantages for all. They're starting to make allusions and inferences towards Al-Anon, okay? And that this is a family disease and that many other people around us can get well also, okay? When they are in the world of the spirit that we can access through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? Let's keep going, Vincent. Thank you. You're doing great.
Thanks, Kevin. It is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Being mostly business or professional folk, we could not well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation.
Okay, what's an avocation? This is really important, guys. What's a vocation? If we say what's a vocation? What's a vocation? What do you think, Vincent?
An avocation would mean that we are like truly self-supporting on all levels and we look out for each other.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of it. That's close. That's close, Vincent. So a vocation, if you get vocational training, it means that they're training you how to get a job. So a vocation is your job that we get paid for. Okay. And so an avocation is the opposite of a vocation. Yeah, Rob there just put a hobby. Okay. Or it's charitable. The point that they're trying to make is that we don't get paid for our alcoholic work. Okay. We don't accept money for our alcoholic work that we do. Okay. We don't get paid in money. We get paid in other ways. Okay. We get paid in spiritual currency, baby. You better believe that. Okay. I've been, yeah, you bet. Yeah, we'll raise the roof. We get paid in spiritual currency. Okay. And I am a wealthy man. I'm a wealthy man through God's grace. Okay. We get paid in other ways, but an avocation means that we don't get paid for that. Okay. We don't get paid for what we do in AA. Now, why does that matter? Well, because think about the era. When did this start? In the 1930s. What else was going on in the 1930s? How about the greatest economic depression in the history of mankind? Okay. And it was not easy for people to believe that there was no money involved in AA. I mean, everyone had a get rich quick scheme and everybody was selling snake oil in the 1930s. And so the fact that AA was actually truly spiritually devoted and that our spiritual work in AA is an avocation was something that was almost hard to believe. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the forward to the second edition, which we'll get into next week in an article that was written by Jack Alexander, what that meant to our society. Okay. Back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. When writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellowship to omit his personal name, designating himself instead as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Very earnestly, we ask the press also to observe this request, or otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. We are not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. There are no fees or dues whatsoever. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. We are not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination, nor do we oppose anyone. We simply wish to be helpful to those who are afflicted.
Okay, so already for anyone who's been around AA even a little bit, we're starting to see the formation of the 12 traditions. And even in this early writing, so this is 1939. Okay, Bill Wilson wrote the 12 traditions. The first time the traditions really appear, I believe, was 1947 in one of the grapevines. They are accepted by AA World Services in 1950. But the first General Conference of AA in 1950, they're first accepted. And the first time that they're put in the big book is in 1955. And it took a long time for the traditions to really be fully accepted. And a lot of it is because we're defiant alcoholics. We're just defiant alcoholics and we're childish. Okay. We're, the psychiatrist Harry Tebow says that we're emotionally immature and we're overly sensitive. Okay. And so people tell us, these are the 12 rules, and we pushed back for a long time as a society. We don't want any rules. But these are the rules that really protect AA from me. They protect AA from my ego and wanting to take over, because Alcoholics Anonymous would just be better if y'all would just make me president. Just make me the president of AA and I'll have this thing cleaned up in a week. Okay. And we'd all be drunk and dead. Okay. For sure. And so let's talk just very briefly about some of these traditions. tradition 9 talks about we ought never be organized. And he says here, we are not organized in the conventional sense of the word. And it's something I hear thrown around a lot every time somebody, forgets to buy coffee for the meeting or shows up late and the meeting starts late or whatever it is. And what do they always say? What's the joke they always make? Oh, we ought never be organized. Ha, 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 ha. Right? That's an absolute abuse of the tradition, and it is not the spirit in which the tradition is meant at all. It does not say that I'm not supposed to become organized, an organized, responsible member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am absolutely supposed to be lifted up by the Spirit of God and these 12 steps to become the type of man that God would have me, the type of grown-up that God would have me be in terms of getting organized in my life and my commitments and my responsibilities to Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay? And I'm clear about that with my sponsees, and you better believe my sponsor is clear with that about me, to me, about showing up and doing what I say I'm going to do and being a man or a person of integrity. What Bill Wilson is talking about when he says we ought never be organized, he means we are not organized like a corporation. Bill was a lawyer. He was a night school lawyer. He was a stock speculator by day. He was a day trader. Okay. He would have been all over this GameStop stuff. Okay. He would have been all over Bitcoin. I guarantee Bill Wilson would have been a Bitcoin enthusiast. Okay. That's what he did during the day, but he was a night school lawyer. And so he knew what an organization meant. He means that in the corporate sense, that we are not organized like a corporation. We do not have a human boss. We don't have a CEO that reports to several different vice presidents in AA. We are not organized like that. We have one boss. Who's the boss, guys? Who's the boss?
God.
G to the OD, baby. That is it. G Dizzle is the boss, and that is it. And the highest we ever get in Alcoholics Anonymous, the highest position we can ever attain is sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is it. That is it. Okay. In fact, at the top, the very pinnacle of AA, you know who's there? The newcomer who's walking in tonight. First meeting ever. Still has booze on his breath. That's the top. That's who. All of this, everything we're doing is for him or her. Everything that we do in AA is for him or her. Okay? They're the most important person. That's what we mean. That's what we mean when we say you're the most important person in the room. Everything that AA does is for them. Right? Our whole existence is for them. So we are not organized in the conventional sense of the word. There's no dues or fees. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. However, I will say that in terms of our singleness of purpose, so that's tradition 3. Only requirement is a desire to stop drinking. The long form of the third tradition says something different. The long form of the third tradition says the only requirement is a desire to stop drinking. Our fellowship ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Okay, so there's a lot of people who will say like, well, I have a desire to stop, but we need to qualify and we need to make sure that people who are attending AA are alcoholics. Okay, that's all I really wanted to share. We will finish reading this and we will be done for tonight.
Thanks, Kevin. We shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book, particularly from those who have commenced work with other alcoholics. We should like to be helpful to such cases. Inquiry by scientific, medical, and religious societies will be welcomed. Alcoholics Anonymous.
All right. Beautiful, guys. That takes us right to 7 o'clock. And that's all. That's all we're going to read for tonight. Thank you very much. I'm really glad I was able to kind of set the stage and I think foundationally set us up for everything that we're going to be going through over the next several weeks and years for that matter. I always say any Tuesday night, I will be here. I'm always pumped when there's a big room full of people like there is today. But even if just one of you shows up, we will go through this work, man. And even if you didn't, I would probably still hang out and read the book myself. So one way or another, man, I'm going to be here, and you guys keep making the effort. I'll keep making the time, man. That's what I say to my sponsees. You make the effort, I'll make the time. Okay. And it's truly, though, guys, it's one of the absolute pleasures and joys of my life to be here with you and to share this with you, to share what I have been given and to share with you what I have found in this book. I have absolutely been rocketed and catapulted into the fourth dimension of existence, but I never really feel it more than when I'm here with you. Right? I never feel more alive than when I'm here with you, with other alcoholics. So thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're going to close with the Lord's Prayer. I like to close with the Lord's Prayer here. It's something that they do in Southern California, and I love that. That's where my sponsor's from, as I've said. And then what I also like to do is after that, we will take a quick minute and we'll go around the room, and everyone can just say a quick introduction, let us know where you're from, because that's one of the coolest things about the Big Book Study, brothers and sisters. We got people here from all over the world tonight. So let's say hello and get to know each other, okay? So let's close with the Lord's Prayer, if you guys would. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen. 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 All right.